Hi, everyone. I am Christina Chan. I lead the funding programs at Ripple. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's XRPL Grants and XRPL Accelerator. Really excited to have you here today talking to Francesco. We're going to be talking about security. Francesco is the director of product at OnChain AI. Really excited to have him here and just really get down dirty with all things security. So, Francesco, when it comes to security, we know that it's a very popular topic in this space. Everyone talks about it all the time in Web3. But we still hear a lot about hacks and things that still continue to occur in this space, right? And when they happen, sometimes it seems like the bad actors are still getting away with what they're doing. And from my understanding, that's kind of like what you're doing in OnChain AI, right? You and your team are helping us essentially fight financial crime in this space. Can you kind of talk about a little bit of what you're doing and introduce yourself and what you're doing in OnChain AI?
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys can hear me, right? Awesome. Yeah, I can't see any of you with the lights, but I trust you're there. Thank you for having me. Brief introduction, Francesco. I lead the product effort at AnChain, being with the company for around 3 years. I joined we were around 8 people, and now we're almost 50, so we grew quite a bit in 3 years, and it's been a pretty fun ride. And as Christina was mentioning, we work, our whole purpose is to make the ecosystem safer. So we are a security and compliance company based out of San Francisco. We've been around for around 5 years, sorry. And we develop products to fight financial crimes, which basically means a lot of different things, right? What kind of crimes do we fight? How do we make the ecosystem safer? As we'll hear today, there's a lot of different attack vectors and a lot of different ways in which hackers still get away in the space. Hackers, scammers, terrorists. So we basically develop products. We're a technology company. And we develop products to make the ecosystem safer for developers, for big institutions jumping into space, for government and regulators that, of course, find themselves having to regulate the space. So this is the very high level about OnChain. We have 4 different products to do this, and we can dive a little bit deeper.
Right. And I know we talked about earlier yesterday. OnChain actually received XRPL grants, right? Just kind of curious, can you kind of talk to us about what you're doing for the XRPL ecosystem? What have you built? Kind of want to give the community a feel for what's going on with OnChain, especially on XRPL.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to talk about 2 other products where we receive grants, specifically where we support the XRP ledger. So these 2 products are, one is an API. It's an API. It's a transaction monitoring and wallet screening API. What does that mean? Basically, if you're an institution, regulated institution, but even like a small project, and you're touching the blockchain, you're moving money in and out, you're receiving payments or you're making payments, a lot of times you need to do counterparty risk on the people that are making that payments into your network and applications. What does that mean? Well, are you receiving money from a sanctioned individual? Are you receiving money from a terrorist? Or are you sending money to a hacker or a scammer? So we received a grant from the XRPL Foundation to support the XRP ledger into our products. And these products specifically, it's an API where you basically pass to the API a wallet, and when we return, it's a risk score, an AI-generated risk score for those wallets that tells you, hey, this is a hacker, it has a very high risk score, you should not transact with it. Or, hey, this wallet has a high volume of transactions with a scammer, be aware of it, right? It has a high risk of being involved in something sketchy. So we launched this API last year, and we opened it up for free to the developers on the XRP ledger. So if you're building projects and you want to make sure that you have these measures in place, today it's free. You can just go on the website and get your API key, and you can start hitting the API and do those sort of checks. So this is like grant number 1 that we got. Grant number 2 that we got, it's for a GUI version, right, of GUI version of this API. It's basically like a dashboard and a visual interface that visualizes like what's happening on the blockchain, right? So if you're a big bank, big financial institution, and you launch an application on the blockchain, or you launch a product on the blockchain, again, you need to do these AML checks, they're called, anti-money laundering checks, counter-terrorism financing, and you need to do due diligence over the people who are interacting with your network. So we have this product that is specifically designed for compliance officers and investigators to do due diligence on wallets interacting with their network. It is also used for when bad things do happen, and people need to investigate money flows. So to give you an example, last year, one company lost $100 million, and they had no idea where that money was going. So they used our product to actually do investigations over where that money was going, where it was liquidated. They were able to recover some of it by working with exchanges and freeze some of these assets, etc. Right. So these are two of the initiatives that we launched with the XRP Ledger. We're working on a couple more, specifically around hooks, smart contracts, etc. So we can dive a little deeper.
Really excited to see that come into the ecosystem, or what you're building. I know yesterday we were just talking about, not just for XRPL, but like bridging to other chains. Can you kind of just talk us a little bit more about that, especially when it comes to detecting and scoring and having that risk profile when it's like coming from another chain, especially through a bridge? I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, so unfortunately hackers are very sophisticated, right? And when they do steal money, they try to hide it pretty well. Not always, right? They're not always that sophisticated. Some of them are not very smart in how they operate. But when they do get away with some money, maybe they find vulnerabilities in an application or in a smart contract, what they then want to do is obfuscation of those funds, right? So they move them around to a lot of different wallets, or they move them around to privacy-enhancing protocols, or sometimes like they move them around through bridges to other chains. So we do a lot of work in trying to understand where these money flows go, and that involves also going through bridges, seeing the activities on other chains, and trying to find like the full start to end of these money flows. For example, if you think of an EVM chain, think of Ethereum, you have your MetaMask wallet. With that same wallet, you can do operations on BNB, you can do operations on Polygon and other EVM compatible chains. So if you were to just assess the risk of a wallet on one chain, on just Ethereum, without considering their activity on Polygon or BNB, that wouldn't be enough. It wouldn't be holistic. So we find all these activities. We have AI algorithm that we developed that assign risk scores to these wallets based on this holistic activity.
Yeah, that's, really just wanted to shift over to, there's bad actors out there, they're stealing our money. What are some of the common methods that you've seen that they've used to really, hack the system and steal money from, consumers like ourselves? What have you seen out there when it comes to the different methods?
Yeah, a lot of different things, right? But they can probably be summarized in like different categories, probably like around 5 categories, I would say. There's, of course, smart contract attacks that we see and we hear all the time. We have sort of like transaction attacks where people sort of like make your, like they sort of like make a transaction, they see this transaction going to the mempool, right, and they're able like to basically make that transaction before you, or like mess with that transaction that you're making. There's wallet attacks, right? We've heard of like drainers and people being attacked or their money being drained from their wallet when they attack themselves.
That's actually that's funny you bring that up. That actually happened to me before. Just so I don't know. I saw some, and it was my first time in the NFT space. So my background before running a funding program is product design and user experience. So the way I learn to use the application is just by button jamming. Like, oh, I'm just gonna click on everything, like whatever. This is how I learn. But I saw some cute like NFT project. It was my first time. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna like try to mint. Like, what is a mint? Like, I don't know. I'm just gonna button jam. I didn't really read MetaMask. They make you accept like all these things. I don't read. Yep. It's my fault. But then it ended up like draining my wallet. I didn't have a whole lot of money in there, but I'm like, I don't know what just happened. Mm-hmm. And I guess I was reading forums, and they were just kind of explaining it to me. So what do you think happened there to me? I'm like not embarrassed to talk about it, but I just kind of want everyone to know, like, it is out there and like how to watch out for it. So what exactly? You're just talking about draining wallets, so bring that up.
No, and thank you for sharing the experience, right? You're not the only one, right? There's people who lost a lot of money, right? Just like through wallet drainers. Right. And this is actually pretty sophisticated. Well, not that sophisticated, but it's a pretty well done scam mechanism, right? So apparently, you can buy, and we found this on our threat intelligence efforts, you can go and buy templates of crypto wallet drainers on underground Telegram chats. Oh. So there's people selling templates for people to go and implement this like scamming website.
Okay.
So the way it works is, there's these templates with some malicious code.
It's like a WordPress template, but more complicated.
Sort of, right?
Okay, got it.
So a lot of the times what these hackers and scammers do is they compromise a Twitter account, right? Maybe like a famous Twitter account. And from this Twitter account, now X, I shouldn't be calling it Twitter anymore. From this account, they post about this like fancy new airdrop or about like a known NFT project that is doing something if you do these transactions, right? So, in this case, Christina, you probably like saw something like this. You clicked on the link. You went on this website, and you're looking at this website. This is a copycat of what would be a Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? For example, like to give an example, someone would create an exact copycat of the website of Bored Ape Yacht Club. They would put it up there. Christina comes in. She connects her wallet, and then she, clicks sign or something. And in the smart contract that she's interacting with, there's some malicious code that basically drains the funds that are in your wallet. So this is probably what happened. And then there's literally the most famous wallet drainer is called like Monkey Drainer or something like that. They made like over $1 million just draining wallets like this.
Should I change professions? Just kidding, not active.
And then what they do is like they take this money and they try to hide it and then liquidate it, right? So they want eventually like to go to fiat and have that money physically.
So I can imagine a developer integrating your API and with a non-custodial wallet, a web browser like that. If it was someone like me as an end user, maybe then at that point, as I'm button jamming, there's like some kind of red UI that says risk. Like you put your risk score is that you would just give them, you'll give me a risk score, essentially. Right. Yeah.
So in fact, we're working with several wallet providers to do exactly this, right? Yeah. So as a final user, you would go connect your wallet. You're about to connect, or you're about to hit a transaction, maybe send money to someone, and we would display a high risk. There's maybe a hacker. There's some vulnerability involved, or some malicious code that you're interacting with. Be aware of it. Right? You might want to reconsider making this transaction or signing this thing. The other thing that we've been working on this for the past 6 months. We released it like a couple of months ago. Is a transaction simulator, where basically you're about to go and make a transaction. How do you know if your wallet is going to get drained or if the money ends up where it's supposed to be ending up, right? So you're able to do this simulation before you make the actual transaction. So this is another thing that we will probably see integrating in wallets.
Oh, is that, so that's a check even before the transaction
Correct.
is, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
So is the funds going where it's supposed to be going? Or
and then
is,
initiates,
right.
okay, got it.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty interesting. Definitely, definitely have felt firsthand what it feels like to get, I guess, quote unquote, hacked, or like someone stealing my money. You know, a lot of time we talked about like the earlier about the NFT space a lot. You know, a lot of creators out there creating NFTs. I definitely tried. You know, obviously my first time getting NFTs and really into the NFT space. And there's a lot of things for creators, and a lot of people talk about AI a lot, right? And you talk about how it's helping creators create, or is another tool for creators. There's just so much buzz in just AI right now in general. What do you think AI, what is the role of AI and how in the security in the blockchain space? Where do you see that going? Especially, you know, as AI is just everywhere.
Everywhere right now, yeah. Yeah, it's true, right? It's a new tool, right? That, you know, we've been talking about AI for 10 years.
Right,
but of course, with ChatGPT and, you know, like the old bot that he created last year, everybody now is talking about AI, right? And if you look at like some of the new startups and some of the new funding being allocated, well, the people in the startups in Y Combinator, most of them are AI companies.
Right, so. Right. There's big funds in AI right now. Yeah.
Which is interesting, because eventually it's a technology, right? And as a technology, it can be applied to a lot of different verticals. In specifically around, you know, intersections between AI and blockchain, there's many, right? There's, you know, auto generation of, you know, media that can be minted as NFT. There's, you know, we were talking last month, I was on another panel with a couple of people in the blockchain space as well, and we're talking about the potential of transparency in training, using like blockchain as sort of like providing transparency in training of these like big AI models. To your question, right, what can we do for security and for the blockchain using AI? Multiple things, right? I talked earlier about one, right? We at OnChain, we've been working with AI for the past 4 years, right? And we analyze a lot, you know, gigabytes and terabytes of data or transaction data that would be like impossible to do manually, and we basically generate with our machine learning algorithms risk scores for these entities on the blockchain. So this is like one way in which you can catch like suspicious behaviors without actually having like someone manually go and check every single transaction. That's not what you want, right? It's gonna, you know, take forever otherwise. So you can have this sort of like kind of like detection mechanisms, anomaly detections mechanism, suspicious activity, sort of like detection using AI models. Another interesting and promising application that we've been seeing, and we actually just released something about this as well, is, you know, using GPT-4, which is the algorithm behind ChatGPT. Can you analyze and scan smart contracts, right? And try to find vulnerabilities in these smart contracts, right? Or explain what certain functions do, or you know, kind of like modify certain functions if vulnerabilities are found.
Yeah.
So this is like something we've been working on recently. We released like a new tool where we basically scan these smart contracts using GPT-4, and we flag whether GPT-4 finds vulnerability in some of these smart contracts.
Yeah. So they're helping you learn about the vulnerabilities too, right? Not just scanning.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. And it could be even just best practices, right? Hey, like it scans the smart contract and it tells you, hey, you know, no major vulnerabilities found, but there's this thing that you could do a little bit better, right? Or this other thing that you could write in a different way.
Right.
So, you know, it's very helpful on that front. A lot of developers in our company, but a lot of my friends who develop software are using either that or GitHub Copilot.
Is that available for the community right now, or still sort of like an alpha or beta?
Yeah, so it's available. It's kind of integrating into one of our software, so it's not kind of like freely open to everybody. We plan on eventually kind of like opening it up, but of course, you know, OpenAI is also expensive to use, right? So it's
I heard
big cost associated.
Costs so much to just keep.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So, I mean, we have a lot of amazing developers here, especially in the XRPL community. What's your advice to, all the builders out there when it comes to security? What can they do better? How do they help their customers? Especially with the things that they're building.
Yeah, that's a good question.
How do you help them help me?
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah, for people developing on the XRP ledger, we always recommend operating with the NIST cybersecurity framework, right? NIST is the, I believe, National Institute of Standard and Technology. Or, I might get the acronym wrong, but they develop standard on things to follow or the community can follow to, in this case, be safer, right? And implement best practices in cybersecurity. And their cybersecurity framework has 5 components, right? It's the very first one is identify. Right. It's IPDRR, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So what does that mean for application in the blockchain, right? So identify. Can we identify before we go in and deploy applications whether there's vulnerabilities in it, right? So let's do our audits, right? Whether it's smart contract audits or whether it's pen testing or front end and back end audits. So let's do our audits before we go and launch our application to identify some of these vulnerabilities, right? And fix them. If there's still going to be some attack vectors, right? So that brings us to the second point: protect. How do you protect your application when there's still attack vectors that are, you can be attacked from? So the old protect part is, how do you handle, for example, how do you do your key management, right? Of course, private keys are, very powerful.
Yes.
Sort of admin tool, right?
Yeah.
That it's what you own and what gives you admin privileges over your wallet or your smart contracts or your application. So what is your private key management system? And what is the response plan, right, in case something happens, right? So can you put it together before you actually go and deploy? So that's on the protect. The following is something that the industry is still pretty mature and doesn't still do very well, right? Which is detect, respond and recover. On the detection, so a lot of people and a lot of companies, right? They think about security as just like a box to tick, right? Which is unfortunate, and led to a lot of hacks last year. Just $4 billion were stolen last year in hacks. Yeah. 2 billion of which in smart contract hacks. Yeah. So a lot of companies just decided that they did their smart contract audit, they paid their fair amount because they're pricey. And
talking about
was
third party, having a third party check.
Third parties, yeah.
Audit.
And that was it. But if you look at the data, 91 of the hacked smart contracts last year were hacked, right? And they all had audit done, right, by third-party companies. So what can you do? One of the things that we notice is that a lot of the times, it takes a lot of time for companies to detect that an exploit has been happening. They run an exploit, $600 million stolen, end of 2021, if I remember correctly. They found out they were exploited 5 days after the exploit. Traditional cybersecurity tells you that you should find out under 2 hours, right? 5 days it took them to just detect. And then it took them 30 days to respond and fully recover, right? And they didn't fully recover. So what sort of detection mechanism do you have in place around alerting for what after you launch your application? And then there's the respond, right? Because it's not a matter of if we're going to get attacked, right, or someone is going to try to exploit it. There's money involved, right? So you can assume there's always going to be some sort of malicious actor trying to exploit your application. So how do you respond to it, right? Having response plans. In cybersecurity, they call it SOC teams, Security and Operations Center. So having security professionals who do that, or that you can outsource some of these efforts to, it's very important. And then if something does happen, right, you're not able to respond, right? How do you recover these funds, right? So these are some of the things that I recommend doing as a cybersecurity company. We recommend doing to developers and builders. Of course, always go and talk to security professionals who can advise you on these sort of activities. And if you want to, on the compliance side, of course, you don't want to receive fines from regulators, right? So have your checks in place, right? Make sure you're not interacting or you're not having interactions with bad actors in the ecosystem. That's always sort of best practices that you can adopt. Because a lot of these tools are free or relatively inexpensive, right? So don't think of, unfortunately, security is like insurance, right? You only realize that you need it once it's too late, right? So doing this proactively and not just reactively, it's very important, and that's what we recommend doing.
Right. Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much for really giving us a breakdown of everything that's going on in OnChain. Do we want to open up the question? We still have some time for some questions. Anybody have any questions? Oh, someone have the mic.
Hey, very interesting indeed, and obviously timely given the constant nature of exploits in blockchain. I'm curious, I have two questions. Question one being, you mentioned sanction lists and such. As an American, obviously, I have to answer to OFAC. So hypothetically, if I was, for example, running a political campaign, which I'm definitely not doing and will not do, so don't worry about that, anyone here. But let's say I'm running a political campaign and I want to take donations, right? Do you guys have a way where you can match OFAC names to blockchain addresses and then flag those on the ledger?
That's a good question, right? You're not running the political campaign yet, maybe down the line. But
he's definitely gonna run. He's gonna.
It's proactive, right? It's like making all the proactive step to get there and run this campaign. But yes, right. So if you look at OFAC, actually, a lot of times they put on their list addresses associated with names, right, directly. So we ingest OFAC data. We ingest a lot of other different sanction list data. And we have that integrated immediately into our product, right? So what we do is providing these APIs. We not imagine there's a wallet associated with a terrorist, Al Qaeda, right? And they have a wallet associated with it. It's an Ethereum wallet, and you're accepting donation, and you see you're using the API that we developed, and it tells you, hey, this wallet is 100% risk, right? So you shouldn't interact with that. We give additional information. So we tell you, hey, this wallet belongs to a terrorist organization. It's on a sanction list. And specifically, it's on the OFAC sanction list, and it belongs to Al Qaeda, right? And specifically to this person who has this name and this last name. It's not always possible to do one-on-one sort of match. But if the information is provided, or if our threat intelligence team is able to find it, that's possible to do.
And you guys can follow that through a series of different addresses across bridges and so forth. If it originates from a single OFAC flagged account or any other list flagged account, even if it's a whole different network at the time that it gets.
Right. So we can follow the money, and those risk scores expand, right? So imagine they're wallet A as 100 risk score. The music is because we have 1 minute left, I see.
No.
You're doing great.
Those risk scores expand to the other wallets, right?
That makes sense. I was curious also, if we have 2 seconds, can you give an example? Have you guys caught any fraud on the XRP ledger yet?
Have we found any fraud?
Yeah. A lot of your examples were more smart contracts, EVM, so I was just curious if there was anything on the actual ledger,
Yeah, we have actually. There's less activity, which is a good sign, right? On that front. But there were, last year, we were talking to a company who was basically being farmed. There were a lot of wallets doing airdrop farming. And that's, for those who are not familiar, it's basically a single entity developing a lot of different wallets and kind of getting all these airdrop when, the issuer of that airdrop think it's just one entity, right? So we were detecting some of those behaviors. And then there was a customer of ours who was using to screen. They were an NFT marketplace, and they are, and they were screening wallets interacting with their network. And there were like a couple of wallets that we had conversation with that we flagged this risk score, and then we found out that they were having like transaction with hackers and scammers. So yeah, it's less volume of suspicious behavior, fortunately, but
Well, thank you, Francesco.
Thank you.
Helping us fight financial crime one bad actor at a time. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody.